Hello there. Welcome to Nerd.World. If you are a returning viewer, welcome. If you're someone new to the channel, please like, share and subscribe if you enjoy this video, and if you do, please check out some of my other videos on this channel and on my second Nerd.World films that there's a link to in the description below. With that said, I'm sure you know what this video is, and you clicked on it, you know that you've seen the title. It's 6 forgotten sci-fi shows which I think deserve a little bit of attention, whether that be praise or scorn. You decide. With that said, let's get started. Coming in at our number 6 spot, we've got Sliders. Now, if you never saw Sliders, it was a pretty interesting premise. Basically, a kind of crazy nut scientist builds a dimensional portal in his basement and sucks his professor, his friend, and a complete stranger into a parallel universe after a few convoluted steps that get them there. That parallel universe initially is like a icy wasteland with a massive tornado heading towards them, so he forces the machine to open up another portal before it was really ready. This gets them lost in the dimensions, and it was a wonderful concept. I mean, every universe they could go to would basically just need the settings like this one. You just change up some of the politics or the environment or who's in charge. Like one universe they come to, the French Empire never collapsed and still rules America. Things like that. It was a great show with a brilliant cast headed by John Rhys-Davies and Jerry O'Connell, Sabrina Lloyd. It was a brilliant show, and I can recommend it. It had some interesting villains. It swapped out the cast a little bit towards the end, where the show got a little sketchy towards the end, but it did introduce some new villains. Basically another race of humans. They're not quite, I say human, human will be the broad term, an evolutionary dead end in every other universe that survived in theirs, but Homo sapiens never evolved as a result, and they travel to other universes and they find humans everywhere and they conquer and enslave them, and they're slowly following our heroes from universe to universe, conquering them as they try to figure out a way to stop them, realizing that the key to it might be within the very dimension shifting technology they're using in the first place. In at number 5, we've got Sequest DSV, or Sequest 2032, depending on where you are in the world and what season you're looking at. This was, again, a bit of an out-of-the-box show for being a little different than your traditional sci-fi. I mean, your traditional sci-fi being your Star Trek sort of stuff, spaceship running around in space meeting aliens. And although there are actually some aliens in Sequest, it's all pretty much set under the ocean. And it's about a state-of-the-art advanced prototype submarine that started off its career pretty much as a dedicated military craft for the United Earth's oceans, but will be converted into a more peacetime role of part military vessel, part research ship, having things like its nuclear ordnance stripped out. The vessel had an organic skin and kind of looked like a giant squid powering through the ocean. It was larger and more powerful and more advanced than any other submarine in the world by a long way, and was a huge power projection and PR coup for the UEO against its enemies such as the Micronesian Alliance and other confederacies around the world. The submarine was designed and then later captained by Captain Nathan Bridger, its original, as I said, designer. He would later become its captain. He was played by the late Roy Scheider. The series also starred Jonathan Brandis, who is also tragically passed away now at the shooting of this video for almost 20 years. Part of the 27 Club, if I'm not mistaken. He played the boy genius of the submarine, responsible for creating the technology, or at least perfecting the technology that allowed dolphins to communicate with humans, or at least loosely. The show also had a non-human star in the form of the dolphin Darwin. The show would explore various sci-fi tropes, as I said, like aliens, time travel, mech warriors, all kinds of stuff throughout its run. It ran for 2.5 seasons, being very sadly cancelled in the middle of its third season. Third season was interesting as it saw the departure of Roy Scheider almost completely, as he stepped down from being captain of the Sequest and being replaced by Michael Ironside in one of his rare outings as a good guy, as he traditionally plays a bad guy in films like Total Recall, etc. From season 2 onwards, the show would star Peter and Dom DeLuise, playing two oddball characters, one in particular playing Dagwood. Dagwood was a form of genetically engineered human, although he had a below average intellect. His people, so to speak, were bred for war. They were trained and bioengineered to be good at it. They, though, however, were all kept on an island because there was no war to fight, and they were treated as little more than prisoners in a detention center. The show explored this theme fairly well throughout what was left of the run of the series, of course being cancelled in season 3. I have previously done a video on these genetically engineered super soldiers, which I'll try and remember to link somewhere in the credits or a card or something. In at number 4 we've got Space 1999 starring Martin Landau. The show's premise was utterly bonkers. It was ridiculous and would have basically seen the genocide of all life on Earth, but they just kind of glossed over that and ignored it. Basically, there's a moon base and there's an accident, and the moon as a result is shot out of Earth's orbit and begins to traverse the galaxy on its own, somehow managing to fly into other systems and meet new civilizations while in no way possibly moving faster than light. But again, it's an old show and they didn't really worry too much about the physics. It's campy, it's cheesy, it's ridiculous, and it's awesome. Space 1999, not to mention the fact that it's called Space 1999, which I filmed this video in 2020. We don't have a moon base alpha right now, and I don't recall us losing the moon and all dying, so unless I blinked and missed it. But anyway, the show, it's got a huge cult following. It's a very good show despite its insane premise. In at number 3 is Space Precinct. This is a British television sci-fi series from the mid-90s created by the same guy that created Thunderbirds. Space Precinct is a very serious sci-fi show which takes itself and the world that it exists in incredibly seriously and teaches us a mother it doesn't. It's by Jerry Anderson. It's funny, it's insane, it's bonkers, it makes no sense. I don't understand why it was ever made. But it occupies a special place in my heart because I remember watching it with my dad after I finished school when I was a little kid. And back then I thought it was great. Now I look back on it really, and I think I've got a bit of rose-tinted goggles. A bit of 2020 hindsight tells me it's not the best show, but it is good in a way. It's got charm, shall we say. It's got a lot of charisma. It's basically about... It's what it says in the tin. It's a space precinct. It's police in space. They're in another solar system, and it mostly centers around a former NYPD detective who obviously transfers from New York to another planet and becomes part of a police force that's there to police both human and alien activity and make sure everyone's abiding by the rules and not committing crimes. Just like he was doing in New York, just with aliens, and it's in space. Right, number 2, prepare yourself. Earth Final Conflict by Gene Roddenberry, the same man, the same genius, the same visionary that brought us Star Trek, would bring us Earth Final Conflict. Basically, aliens called Talons make contact with the peoples of Earth. They try to unify the human race, they give us technology, they give us knowledge, but they're also up to something. Now, there's a man who would work from the inside to try and undermine whatever their plans are for the human race. People are disappearing, you've got fanatics following them, they're doing weird stuff, and he doesn't trust them. The series had 5 different series, and they changed the main protagonist as the show went along, and eventually even changed the villain. I won't spoil too much of it if you've not seen it, but basically you go from the Talons being the bad guys to Talons maybe being the good guys to some Talons being the bad guys to a race called the Duridians being the bad guys to a race called the Atavis being the bad guys. The Atavis are actually a lot more interesting and they remind me a lot of the Wraith from Stargate Atlantis. I mean, they're really similar even in the way they feed with their hand and everything. Not to say that Stargate Atlantis ripped off Earth Final Conflict. I'm sure it was an entirely original idea and any similarities are entirely superficial and not related in any way. Yeah. The show was interesting. It had some ups and downs. It had some very compelling characters, to be fair. One of my favourites was Anita La Silva's character, who she played a Talon, whose name escapes me off the top of my head, but she played one of the main bad guy Talons and then later an actual Atavis. And she was very good, and she doesn't have much of an IMDb page going on to much else, but in that she was really, really good and had a lot of presence on screen. And there was a few human villains as well thrown into the mix too. Overall, not the best made. It had a low production budget, which seemed to get lower as the seasons went on, but generally speaking, again, you can tell it was a passion project. It was enjoyable. And at number 1, a show that should make anyone's list, particularly, and I think it does a few times on YouTube actually, any list of shows that were cancelled before their time and where the production company screwed things up royally in everything, and that is Crusade. Now, Crusade was a spin-off from Babylon 5. It starred Gary Cole, Daniel Day Kim. It had a lot of characters coming to it from Babylon 5. It was a show in a lot of ways very similar to Babylon 5, except they decided to stick it on a ship called the Excalibur, a massive vessel built using human technology, Minbari technology, and a bit of Vorlon technology all chucked in together and somehow made to work together to form a coherent vessel. It was immensely powerful. Up until this point, humans, they'd had to use rotational systems to generate gravity aboard their ships. The Excalibur and its sister ship, the Victory for that matter, didn't, as did a few other New Earth vessels at the time that you only see a little bit in this show, and you don't really see much of them in Babylon 5. The show was meant to have a 5-season arc, starting off with the Drakh Plague, but that plague was actually meant to be cured in season 2, and then the story was going to spin off into certain faction elements of what was happening on Earth. Basically, one of the main storyline arcs of Babylon 5 was a great war with these race called the Shadows. Now, without going too much into spoilers, because I know that Babylon 5 isn't that popular, and I'm hoping that I at some point convince someone to out there and watch it, because it's a space opera, it's epic, it really needs watching. But in that show, basically, you got this big war with this race called the Shadows. The Shadows were worried about telepaths because telepaths were the only threat to them or their technology. Humans have telepaths, and they had them all organized into a group known as Psychor, who'd been selectively breeding them to make them stronger and train them to use their abilities. Now, other races have telepaths, like the Minbari and the Centauri. The Narn don't, but some of the other races do. The Narns, for example, used to have telepaths, but the Shadows wiped them all out generations ago. They don't want to see telepaths get used against them. Now, Earth is a kind of corrupt society. Now, they're not really any more special than any of the other races in Babylon 5. The development of the other species in that show is amazing. The short version of this, the Psychor and Earth in general worked with the Shadows. It actually wasn't on the side of light, they were on the side of darkness, although they mostly played a neutral card. But in the aftermath of the war, even though the regime was gone and the Psychor had been dismantled in the years between the end of Babylon 5 and the beginning of Crusade, at least in the continuity of the show, a few years have passed, the remaining elements, the concealed, the hidden, those that the conspirators who remained behind the scenes, the puppet masters, what they were doing. There was this whole storyline about the Cerberus, the character who played Gary Cole, who played the captain of the ship, Captain Matthew Gideon, had formerly been a crew member aboard the Cerberus. It had been destroyed by an unknown alien vessel, which he had seen and he was the only living witness to. It turns out that vessel was a human ship built using shadow technology, and humans have been integrating sudden shadow tech into much of the other systems, perhaps even aboard the Excalibur, but particularly aboard an Earth Force new battlecruiser called the Warlock class, which was utilizing some shadow technology, which is why it was so powerful and so advanced compared to the ships that had come before it, and why it could stand toe-to-toe with Minbari ships, which no human vessel had been able to do before that. It's because it was using shadow tech. Now, that was going to be the main theme of the show, and the Excalibur was going to go rogue, but unfortunately, after I think 13 episodes and it not even being broadcast in the correct order, and at a time slot that put it in competition with other established shows, not to mention its target audience probably wouldn't have been in bed, who knows. It was just a it was a clusterfuck, basically. They screwed it up royally, and they never should have cancelled it. They should have let it burn, its slow burn, into becoming what it would have become. It's now a cult series, more cult even than Babylon 5, which itself was pretty much a cult show. But there you have it, the number 1, Crusade. Now, if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. It's getting on a little bit now and I want to end it. But again, if you did, thanks for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, you're a beautiful human being, and bye-bye.